So very good afternoon to all our participants. We have another 1 minute and we begin with our webinar today. So it's 3 p.m. We commence with today's webinar. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If things do not go as per expectations, we tend to reset the whole strategy, analyze where we went wrong before, and come back strongly to eventually win. Join us in this electrifying session where our experts will take us through their experiences. HRAI welcomes you all to our next HRAI session on connecting the dots, the reset, reality, or myth. To know more about HRAI and its event, I would request all our participants to visit the link details posted in the chat window. Request all our participants to kindly follow the webinar guidelines, which is also posted in the chat window. It would be great to have all the participants' feedback. We will be running a poll before the Q&A session. Request all participants to kindly give your feedback on the session. I now take the privilege to introduce our esteemed panel members for our today's webinar. To begin with, Mr. Ashok Ramchandran, CEO and President, Schindler India. He is a highly passionate, motivated, and result-driven top talent general management professional with varied experience from leading business in mature markets to fast-growing deploying markets. He has done his ME in Industrial Engineering from Swinburne University of Technology, Australia. Prior to his India stint, Ashok has, to his credit, business turnaround success in Vietnam and Malaysia. He has been serving as the Indian CEO since 2018 and was made the president in 2019. With additional charge of supply chain and R&D, he is the youngest country head in Schindler. His biggest contribution to Indian business has been his singular focus on people and culture cornerstone, of which includes diversity, inclusion, and youth in an attempt to disrupt a traditional industrial equipment manufacturing industry with newer ideas and energy. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invite. Our next panel member, Mr. Papa Ellison Diop, founder, Go for Marketing. He is a marketing and sales professional who holds a Master 2 degree in Marketing Innovation at the University of Paul Valérien of Metz, France, and a Master 2 degree in Marketing and Sales Management at ISIAM at Gir, Morocco. He comes with an immense experience mainly in the FMCG, telecom, social marketing, and consulting sectors. Currently working as a coach in marketing, he accompanies entrepreneurs to develop their marketing strategy, their communication plan, and their sales strategy. Also as a consultant who collaborates with foreign companies by helping them to perform a market strategy for the Senegalese market, as well as by helping them to find a local partner or to establish their business in Senegal or West Africa. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invite. Our next panel member, Mr. ROHIT KUMAR, HR Director, CHRO, Kellogg's India and South Asia. ROHIT is the CHRO for Kellogg's India and South Asia. He has over 20 years of diverse industry experience across pharma, FMCG, and telecom, and has worked across geographies and cultures in India and an international stint in the UK. He has managed scale and complexity across industries in driving organization transformation and growth. He believes that sensation of leaders and building line manager capabilities is the key to bring alive organization culture and value and drive sustainable engagement. Foodie at heart, he loves to cook and indulge in food, but balances that by also being a health and fitness enthusiast. Now I'll introduce the moderator for today's event, Mr. Jonathan D'Souza, Group Head, Talent and Reward, WELSPUN Group. He is a business leader with 17 years of rich experience across the entire gamut of human resource, of which 10 years have been into the leadership role. He holds a global MBA degree from ISB Hyderabad. As an HR expert, he holds proficiency into organization culture and structure, performance and rewards, board and organization communication, mergers and acquisition integration. He also holds business expertise into business strategies and execution, product and business, P&L management, technology and program management. Now, without taking much time, I would now request Mr. Jonathan to take over this session. Over to you, Mr. Jonathan.
So Peterson, thank you for that nice introduction on a Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. It really lifts my spirits, and I'm sure it lifts everyone's spirit, especially knowing that Rohit is a foodie and also, a fitness enthusiast, completely on different sides of the scale there. So let's get started. And, before we, ask our panelists some really tough and tricky questions, let's start with something more lighter, because the pandemic has, kept everybody thinking, sleepless nights and stuff like that. So I would ask each of the panelists, to recollect some of the lighter moments of their personal and professional lives that have unraveled during this lockdown, the pandemic, and something you never imagined you would have gone through. Papa, why don't we start with you on this?
So thank you very much, Mr. Jonathan, for giving me the speech. First of all, I will take this occasion to greet all the panel members, the other panel members, and all the other people who are here to watch with us. So thank you very much to give us this occasion. So to start with your question, I think that we can say that this pandemic is the unprecedented situation who rise to the world. We can say it is a disaster. And now are you getting me, please? Are you getting me?
Yeah, you're audible. Go on, Papa.
Okay, thank you. So we know that we already have more than almost 20 million people who have been infected in the world, and more than 800,000 people who died during this because of this pandemic. In the field of management, organization, company, we have already millions of companies who go bankrupt, and we have tens of millions of people who lost their job. So it is a disaster. Okay, when we say, for example, I'm from Africa, and we know, for example, in Africa, the situation is much more complicated. Okay, why? Because we have so many people who are working in the informal sector. Okay, and these people, they work, they are living day after day. Okay, and because of this pandemic, these people, if the government want to knock them in their house, for example, it is a very bad situation for them. Okay, from my personal experience, I can say that as an entrepreneur, this situation also is complicated for me, because during the beginning of this year of 2020, I have an ambitious plan to develop my business, but it was very difficult to respect this plan. Why? Because I have had some seminars and some training, which most of them in the beginning were cancelled. Why? Because many of the companies, they change their priorities. What will become their priorities is to survive, is to know how to survive from this disaster. Many companies also, they don't have enough money in order to pay training, because the market is very difficult for them, because it's difficult for them to have new customers, because even some companies have problem to pay their employees. So it's why I have had some seminars and training which have been cancelled. And that's to say in introduction that it is a very tough situation for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Baba. Yes, absolutely. It's something which is happening after maybe more than 100 years, So nobody's even fathomed that this will happen. I checked up on a lot of astrologers as well, who generally predict, and I see many predictions of them also coming wrong, because they predicted a great 2020 and out of business, right? So it's unfortunate for everybody. And so Ashok, something on the side before we go to the serious stuff from your end?
Yeah, sure. In fact, I was trying to, rather than talk, I'm going to try and see if I can show something,
Sure.
which probably would be more real. Let me just try and share my screen. So can you see it?
Yeah.
So this is what happened for me in pandemic.
Super.
What I was before and what I am after. So actually March 23rd, I exactly remember I was 85 kilos. And I've always been on this fitness, kind of want to be fit, but I'm too much of a food lover that I could never sacrifice the food. And having come back to India after 2 years, last 18 months, I was every time going to a new city, and India is the kind of food capital, I would say. So when I went to Kolkata, first time Bengali food, then first time Punjabi food, first time Kerala food, first time Bhuvane, eastern of India food. So this is what happened. It became a yellow color photo, and I don't know what happened. Mentally something happened on the March 23rd. I just said, "This is enough." I couldn't see myself in the mirror, so I just started working on it. And today, not only I am leaner, but also I'm getting more fitter, happier, and I think I would bite. It's a lighter note. I'm extremely happy that I did what I did, because it's also helped me from a work perspective. It's helped me to become more energetic, and today I'm able to go and inspire my own team. So we have a huge movement in Schindler. We have a 5 a.m. club running in Schindler, because I actually wake up at 4:30 always. But those days I never used to do the fitness part, but now I'm doing the fitness part as well. So that is something that really dawned on me. It's about mental fitness, meditation, yoga, apart from the physical fitness part as well, which I achieved. So that's my short and brief answer.
No, I think that's brilliant. It's very inspiring. And, the reason I say that is, we can't control how the pandemic is going to turn out. It's all doom and gloom. But there's always a silver lining. And finding that silver lining to keep us motivated, keep others motivated, inspire others, is very, very important.
Correct.
Else, it's going to be a calamity across for the entire humanity.
Correct.
And, on a lighter note, being a foodie, it's always a first time. There's never a second or a third time. So, Rohit, over to you from this. What has been your discovery about yourself, or professionally as well?
So, on a lighter side, I would say that I would have never, ever in my lifetime imagined that 4 months on a trot, I will get to eat 2 meals on the dining table with my family. This is absolutely, the first time I'm experiencing something like this in my professional life ever. And I would have never imagined that this would come, in my working life ever. So I think that has been the first for me, and a big realization that, small joys of having a meal together with the family, eating home cooked food is such a liberating part of the whole family bonding, so that was, I think, clearly the number one. Second, like I was saying, the foodie that I am, when the world was normal, there was a lot of eating out that would happen. And to keep feeding the foodie in me, I had to this time enter the kitchen and take charge, and, more out of necessity, because everybody is doing their bit in terms of the household chores. But in the process, I discovered the hidden chef in me, which is again a big revelation, and I'm quite happy about what I've discovered. Obviously, it comes with its own perils, because now you can't have an excuse that you don't know how to cook, right? I would say the third realization is that, this whole commute to office, and everybody is experiencing that differently, or rather would experience this differently depending on which city you are staying in, how far you are staying away from office. But personally, for me, saving 2 hours every day, which was otherwise going and driving, and using that time to possibly do some bit of efforts around health and fitness has really, really been, again, very liberating for me. So these are the nice things. Now, slightly on a sober side, if I were to say that, the biggest realization I think professionally has been that we had always underestimated with our own mindsets and our own prejudices in terms of how adaptable organizations can be. And the biggest realization was that overnight we had to rediscover our ways of working, ways of engagement, get into the remote rhythm. And I think organizations across, not only in India, I think across industry, across globe, the way technology has enabled remote working has been just phenomenal. And earlier, like I said, there were a lot of mindsets at play. And the last would be that, again, to end on a slightly humorous note, who would have imagined that you would wake up on a Monday morning craving to go to office, right?
True.
So this is again the first ever.
Sure, and all of us who are senior, most companies also realized that they actually found somebody at the CXO level who will drive digital transformation. COVID, which all the men and women put together were not doing. COVID has certainly accelerated that pace so much that whatever we imagined in the next 5 years is happening in 3 to 6 months. So I think that's been another great point of significance in that sense.
Correct.
Okay. Getting a little serious, all of us go through a lot of these reports trying to understand how the puck is going to move, and how do we, as business leaders, how do we look at what is it for us, maybe during or post-COVID? And there are multiple reports talking about, work from home being, right from work from home being as high as 80 to 90% in the future, to real estate, rentals coming down, and all of those various predictions, including diversity and inclusion improving, because now you can cut across geographies and you can also cut across workforces, people in the workforce, and hire people, right? From your perspectives, all of y'all, can you, in your head, what do you think are some of the myths that you're reading about, and what are some of the realities that you think they're going to come about, during and post-COVID, and how will it change the business landscape and the professional landscape for all of us? So, Ashok, why don't we start with you on this? I'm sure you're watching this very keenly.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I think, the myths, probably commonly what most of us would be seeing, the first one being work from home. That would never work, especially in India, in Asia. I mean, I've heard this for a long time. And, it's very funny, but sometimes I even feel divine intervention, right? Because 18 months ago, we launched work from home policy for Schindler India. And every month, 2 days was allocated for that. At that time, there was a lot of uproar from the operations team. It won't work. It's difficult. We are an engineering company. We're not IT. And we pushed it along. The HR and myself, we said, no, we're going to make it happen. And it was really helped. So that was the first myth, I think, that got broken, that it can never work. And second myth, which also I think is broken, is that business cannot work if we are remote. I mean, I'm speaking to so many leaders from different industries. Everybody is telling me that month on month, they are seeing improvements. They are seeing definitely a lot of improvement. I'm seeing it as well for my organization. Every month is getting better. People are getting, in fact, one of the builders called me and said, rather than flying and, coming and having the meeting with me, just give me that as a discount. And I'll happily take the 10,000 rupees more from you, flying from Mumbai to Hyderabad, for example. But if I have to talk about certain realities, I would certainly feel that First of all, this is a pause button. I don't see this as a stop button. It doesn't, I definitely don't think that the whole universe will stop completely and we will start from beginning. I think it will definitely take off from where it kind of stopped here or there. Maybe some industries could be 3 months, some could be 12 months, some could be 18 months. But, and knowing, though I hate this word, people always say the resilience of India. I think it's been a bit overused. But in our context, I definitely see that, especially having worked in Australia for 8 years, Malaysia, Vietnam, and India, I do see why people say that, because we do have that tenacity to strike back extremely strong, and we will rewrite that in terms of coming back very strong. So it's a pause button, not a stop button. That's the first thing I will say. But what will have to happen is the 3 R's, right? Reset, review, rebrand. So re-energize yourself, I would say. Really have to come out of each one. I will talk about even down to an employee level. Simple example is, people saying that, oh, I'm in sales, I don't do operations, or I'm a field employee, I can't do collection. But right now, today, I was talking to one of my colleagues who works in Godrej Locks, and he said he's in sales, and he said for next 3 months, he's been told to do nothing but collect money, outstandings. And if he turns back and says, sorry, but I'm not in charge of debt collection, maybe he won't have a job. So I think everybody should be innovative in saying, I'll do whatever is needed. And here you find all these sparks of brilliance in the talents in the organization, 3 levels down, 4 levels down. First things that we did was we gave a lot of empowerment to the branches, to the local leaders. We cut across hierarchies, and we had a CMT, or the crisis management teams, running every day for half an hour, understanding what is happening, how do we react. Because we're also in some way an essential service, providing elevator service for buildings across India. And we had to think on our feet, and that's what I would say is the reality is, try to be agile and just get moving forward. Finally, on a closing note, I would say stick to a strategy. Stick to a strategy. It really works. There's no doubt about it. Let's not throw everything what we've been doing and say, we'll have to reinvent ourselves completely. We'll have to readjust and reinvent, but not 100%. So that would be, that would be what I would say is a mantra.
So thanks, Ashok. Rohit, what about you?
So, if you look at this global pandemic which we are going through, I think it has resulted in very unique headwinds and tailwinds for various businesses, various industries, various entrepreneurs, various business ideas. And therefore, to Ashok's point, it is in some sense a moment to pause and reflect and rethink, reimagine, recalibrate in your mind in terms of what you want to take away from this crisis. I always say this, consider it as a most expensive experiment that is currently happening. Now, whenever you do experiment, you try to take out the learnings and then deploy it outside the experiment, right? So if it was to be the most expensive and ruthless and kind of experiment ever done, I think for corporates and for businesses and for people, there are 3 or 4 things that you will have to take out and examine. So for example, I think organizations will have to rethink and reimagine the relevance of workplace and what workplace infrastructure is meant to serve as we go forward. I don't think ever we should go back into a scenario where workplace was meant to provide seating space to people, right? I think it's a great time to examine the relevance of workplace to bring collaboration alive, to see that, who needs to be in office in the first place and why do they need the office space. So for example, teams coming together to collaborate and innovate, that's where you would require the office infrastructure the most. teams coming together to engage and network. That's where you would require the office space. Teams coming together to celebrate small milestones, right? That is where you require people under one roof and that physical bonding. But on a day-to-day, I think, for people to log in and open their laptops and work, I think that is going to be greatly challenged as a myth, which thus far was a reality before COVID, right? So that's point number one. I think point number two, what it has done, I think across various strata of people, across businesses, there is a huge realization of, hygiene and safety norms like never before. So, and just imagine 6 months ago, if you would have to call a town hall or gather a set of people to engage on safety norms, it was a nice to do thing. People will do to put a tick in a box saying that we have done our safety training, and you would struggle to get attendance. Now in the new normal, as people start to go back to offices, I think this engagement will become very, very, very critical. And it's a everyday learning and trials and tribulations which people will, keep refining as they go along. So this workplace safety, workplace hygiene, workplace norms will take a different proportion as we go along. And third thing, which I would say is, with all this learning in the last 4 months and the business downturns and upswings that we have seen, there will be huge need for businesses to recalibrate resources. So I'll give you an example. Most organizations currently are seeing people who are in FMCG, consumer goods, food industry, they are seeing a huge upsurge in e-commerce channel contribution. And possibly they are seeing a little bit of shrinkage happening in the traditional modern hyper retail format, right? Because currently those formats are closed. Now, if organizations therefore have to be agile enough to put together and catch the new emerging trend and build capabilities, deploy resources, rebalance your resource allocation, that is the need of hour. And I think like never before, organizations will have to deploy the consumer lens while devising their strategy. They would have been doing that all this while, but in this pandemic, you and I and everybody on this call is also a consumer, and our own behaviors have changed. We are questioning our own requirements, our own behaviors, our own needs, our own ways of shopping, our own frugal ways that have seeped into our life. So, organizations will have to be very, very agile to catch these trends and design and redesign organizational processes for the right consumer emerging trends and consumer experiences. So I think that will be the third reset. And lastly, I would say the biggest learning of all has been that new corporate values are emerging. Corporate values around building a strong foundation of trust. Saying that when you leave employees in an uncontrolled environment where you can't monitor their actions, they can still be productive. And therefore, it boils down to trust. And lastly, I think the whole new skill around innovation, collaboration, seamless job remits getting blurred, and seamlessly people contributing to the common purpose and anchoring employees to the common purpose. That will be, I think, the last one to catch.
Great. Really good insights from both Ashok and you. And clearly, when I was listening to Ashok as well, when he clearly spoke that when he wanted to introduce a work from home policy, he was facing it from the consumers in his own organization, saying that, look, we're an engineering company. But today that's seamless because, as a future leader, he was leading by example, but you could yet see so much of resistance. And I think COVID somehow has, change those resistance bands in the company itself, saying that, look, let's experiment and then let's come back and discuss it, rather than debating and trying to get a perfectly right formula. Ashok, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I want to make one more point, which I've missed. I think two particular departments in every company, which was always never in the limelight and probably not given the due respect, was the one which literally saved many organizations. One is the HR fraternity, and second one is IT department. I think hats off to both these departments today. In fact, I had a town hall in my organization, I was addressing live, and I just had to call out specifically the whole teams in HR and finance, IT. Imagine we had to work from home. They just make things happen, right? Otherwise, and people don't realize that, right? People sitting in the front, they just always complain about IT and they think that HR is for arranging Rangoli competitions. But now finally they realize it's much beyond Rangoli and it's a lot more in depth. And I really want to give credit to the HR members joining this call, that you guys have made a huge difference and made people finally realize how important these two departments are, and especially the HR fraternity, handling the mental and physical stress of employees. That was the point I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Are you seeing anything similar or different happening in Senegal to what Ashok and Rohit just explained? And you're on mute, Papa. Papa, you're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay, it's okay. Thank you. So I wanted to start with the realities. I think for me that the first reality is that the pandemic has shown us something. The pandemic has shown us that the governments and the big companies have made many big investments in the field of construction, in the field of intelligence, artificial intelligence, even in order to go to the moon. The governments and the big companies have made so much investment. Okay, but this pandemic has shown us that we need to put more investment in the field of health, in the field of social living. We can take the example of biggest countries like United States, France, England. We know that they are among the countries which are the most infected. Okay, and this is why I think that today it is a reality that everywhere in the world we have done some investment in the field of health, but the governments, the companies, the entrepreneurs, they need to think again and to do more investment in the field of health in order to better the lives of the populations, of the communities. The second reality for me is that, okay, let me go to the second reality. The second reality for me is that with the pandemic, so many people have lost their work. In the beginning, we were saying that the pandemic can cause so many million people to lose their work. Some people didn't believe in that. And today we are facing such situation where millions of companies go bankrupt and tens of millions of people lost their work. We can verify this information with the United States newspaper. Every day we see thousands of people who lose their work. This is a second reality. The third reality for me is the reorganization of the geopolitical and economical situation of the world. This is also a fact. We have, with this pandemic, we know that there are some countries who were more resilient than other countries, and I think that in the coming years, in few years, countries like China, for example, will take the first place of the global economy. And I have seen a report saying that countries like India or countries like Indonesia will enter in the top 10 of top economies of the world. And this also is a situation which can be reality. And I think that the big companies and investors if they want to invest in the coming years, they need to take into account this situation. Okay, so this is about the reality. About the myth, the first myth for me is that there was newspapers and many people who were saying that with this pandemic, all the businesses will go down. It's true, for example, that it's true that with the close of the bordering, with the close of the bordering, for example, and with the effect of the pandemic, we have had many businesses which go down, mainly in the field of hospitality, mainly in the field of airways transportation, for example. But we have some businesses which continue, which are thriving. First business, I think, is the business of healthcare products and equipment, pharmaceutical. The other business is the business of, for example, FMCG, because I think that the countries have had the maturity, even if they close borders, they have had the maturity to let the raw materials go and come, to let the equipment go and come, and this is something we should honor. Okay, another reason for that is the remote work. Everybody today is adapting to the new situation. In the beginning, it was very difficult for everybody, and we start seeing even governments doing their meetings with the president, the prime minister, the other members remotely. Okay, and this shows that it was in some side, it was only the myth and the business is thriving. Okay, another myth for me is about the dislocation of unions. When, for example, with the European Union, they start closing borders, country per country, many people saw that it will be the dislocation of this European Union. But after 4 months after the beginning of this pandemic, we can see that countries have reopened their borders and the business is coming again. So this is my view about the myth and the reality. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Papa. So, Rohit mentioned this when he was talking about realities and myths, and one of the critical points he said, that consumer behavior is definitely going to shift. And I want to ask both the front-facing business leaders, saying that HR does not, but from Ashok's perspective, what are the consumer trends that and I know it's largely B2B for you, but if you want to talk about B2B and B2C, Ashok, what are the kind of behaviors you are very wary about and you want to know more so that you're able to come out of this pandemic stronger? So what are you advising your teams? You're on mute. Ashok, you're on mute.
The biggest doubt I have, not only for India, but most countries, is PV and PV, pre-vaccine and post-vaccine. I have a very funny feeling that once a vaccine comes, things will get back to normal very quickly. And, people's memory is also very short, as we know. So even, we are working on a budgeting for next year. And I actually told that, my head office that I'm going to give you 2 budgets, pre-vaccine and post-vaccine budget. And that's the biggest challenge, I think, because, and I completely agree with Rohit that we should not look at real estate anymore as, filling seats and filling offices. And I'm sure this I think will become a kind of a good change across the board. I feel like even for us, we've decided that whether there is a vaccine or no vaccine, we will have 70% of workforce only coming back to work eventually, whenever it happens, on a rotation basis. So you could have, Monday a certain group, Tuesday another group. There's no need, for example, a salesperson to be coming to office every day. He can probably come once a week or twice a week at the max. Similarly for many other roles. So we're also doing the hybrid model, make it work. So we're looking at who are the ones who have to come to work, who never have to come to work, and who will probably have to do a bit of both, and which could become a gig workforce. So for example, I strongly feel that many of the marketing functions can become gig. if you're, for example, in charge of video productions for your organizations, corporate videos and stuff like that, there's many elements of organizations which can become gig as well. So this, I think, is going to be a bit of a trend where we're going to see classification of workforces more. But the whole thing of not touching things because of Corona, I think that will move out very quickly. Like even we have introduced touchless elevators, voice enunciators and stuff. It's not like people are coming forward in hordes to buy them. People are saying, I'm happily, I'm okay to use the sanitizer and touch the buttons. They don't want to spend, because people are worried about spending money as well. And, they don't want to put money out of the pockets. So I would see the trends definitely work from home becoming more popular, number one. And the whole evolution we are seeing with digitization and everything. I don't think, my grandmother now uses digital. I couldn't believe it. She ordered for my 40th birthday, a shirt on Amazon. And I said, how do you even know how to use it? She said, my neighbor helped me. So people realize, and they are finding ways to make these things happen. So I think everybody has to find a way. So for example, one of the things that, we are working on is a factory tour, but in a digital format with a 3D experience. So if I have a customer in Chennai who wants to, normally we would have flown him to the factory in Pune. Now we can give him a virtual experience. So digitization is, I'm sure we've all seen that, but I think even in non areas where we thought maybe this won't work here, just have a think. It may work. I'll tell you another simple example. Every lift is in our company, we get it inspected by an independent department, not by the person who are installing. And this team used to go from head office. Now we are stuck. We can't travel easily. So we have actually used digital to do that audit before the lifts are handed over. So we were able to get the local person to switch on the cameras. We switched on the cameras. We used some 3D technology to really go inside and check every nut and bolt. And we were able to confirm that these lifts are safe. So things like this, I would say we can start thinking a bit different.
Yeah, great, Ashok. And I know you need to leave at 4. So, with Papa and Rohit's permission, I'll just ask you a couple of more questions.
Yeah.
But we make max use of your time, and then we continue. Once, I know you once you drop out at 4 because of your other arrangements and you have other calls. So one of the things which came as an audience question earlier when they registered is that as a CEO and as a country head, how do you see this recovery? Is it a V shape, W shape? Do you see a lot of stop starts? What are you thinking about when people ask you this question as a recovery? Investors probably also maybe questioning you, saying that, how are you looking at the situation? So what's your perspective there, economically speaking?
By industry, it's going to be different. Certainly, real estate usually goes last in recovery and also goes last in getting hit. So we got hit the last, and we will probably we will recover last as well. Of course, people airlines, the whole FMCG will be hit for a very long time. I don't doubt that. So I think, but let me say, if I have to give everybody a thumb rule, we believe 18 months as a benchmark. So I think most organizations will go in 2021, we will be looking at 2019 numbers, if that makes sense. So if you're working on a budgeting or a planning cycle, just work on an 18-month lag, number one. Number two is keep your costs on the lowest scenario. We call it red scenario, and keep your revenues to a green scenario, which means try and be optimistic and push your sales like anything. At the same time, keep your costs as low as possible, so that when the recovery happens, you are in the best position than anybody else. That's what I would say.
Sure. I think that's something which is, cost has become a very important lever in these times. And I was talking to a lot of folks is that everybody's so busy trying to survive the present that future planning is gone out of the door. So people say that, nobody's even planning 21, 22, like you rightly said, we present 2 plans. And it's a fact because, earlier, pre-COVID, we were all probably going to restaurants and having quarters. Now we're living quarter on quarter. That's how life has become, right? So I think staying in the moment, doing the best out of the moment, and just surviving so you can thrive in the future is become the norm. And
Right.
the way to then be optimistic about revenues and also keep a very strong eye on costs, right? So, Rohit, coming to you, a very specific question, coming from a coach, a leader, somebody who leads people, influences a lot of decisions at the board level, what advice are you giving leaders like Papa and Ashok, because what they see and what they do, a lot of people tend to follow or believe and trust. So what is your feedback to CXOs and a lot of even HR for that matter on how to navigate this pandemic from a vulnerability and leadership perspective?
Sure. So, like I said, different organizations would have deployed different ways and means to kind of deal with the crisis. But the ones who have been successful are the ones where, there is a cohesion in the leadership team itself to begin with, in terms of how we are anchoring the organization towards a common purpose. And how do we therefore enable the larger, wider organization? And when I say cohesion at the leadership level, to the point on vulnerability that you're mentioning, because these are the times, people do tend to become vulnerable because nobody has I would say nobody always has the right answer. Nobody can always be right. And people do need that air cover of needing a shoulder to lean on. And therefore that cohesiveness of being one team anchored very strongly on the common purpose should start from the leadership team of any organization. And then it should become the leadership mission to create that hyper engagement in the current times. And even as we start coming back to office and start, leading our normal lives, the challenge then would be that you would have, like, Ashok was mentioning, even when things were to become normal, they will always have about 70% people consistently coming to office, 30% either working remotely or in the market. And that number could vary by organizations. But the leadership challenge of reaching out to employees, addressing their unique needs, and managing engagement, and more importantly, inclusion in the split office scenario is going to be one challenge that will continue to face, leadership. So I think that is going to be critical. Secondly, I would say that, if you look at leaders conventionally, there is a persona that one has to depict as a leader. And that persona is that of somebody who's in total control all the time, very, very clear about the vision, the strategy, the long term, also equally adept at handling short-term crisis. So it's almost a persona of a demigod. Now, the reality is that leaders are humans too. And therefore, it's absolutely all right to be vulnerable. In fact, vulnerability is the biggest virtue that people are now talking about, especially in leaders, because that helped them become more real, right? And more human. And then, when you're more human, more vulnerable, willing to admit that you're not demigod, then the real connections start to happen. And when real connections start to happen, magic happens. So I'll give you an example. In Kellogg, for instance, we took it upon ourselves as a leadership team that we will be reaching out to each and every employee, making that connect, ensuring that, besides the macro engagement, which is in the form of town halls, check-ins, etc., we will also be creating this micro engagement of actually connecting with employees, understand what are the unique challenges they're facing, and then what as an organization we can do to enable them. And it keeps us more real, it keeps us more grounded. It requires a huge amount of humility to reach out and break that barrier. And I think that is going to be the mantra, and it's going to be relevant even as we transition to the new normal.
Great, great. I think, I completely agree with whatever you said. There's so many new things we are encompassing, which even our leadership and all our leadership training programs and all of that, whatever we learned pre-COVID is all junked, right? There are newer behaviors, and vulnerability is such an important thing, because at the end of it, it's a humanitarian crisis. It's not a business crisis only, right? It's much larger. So I'm so glad that you were able to bring these out, as part of your insights. Ashok, I'm just coming back to you, and Papa, I beg your pardon to keep you waiting, but I know Ashok is running out of time, and I need to ask you, Ashok, this is a question made on the web by me, saying that, when you get up every day in the morning, what are the 3 things you're prioritizing every day for yourself? Because you lead a large organization. So what are your priorities when you wake up in the morning, and how do you go about setting that up? Because it's a completely new ballgame now.
Sure. For me, the top 3 things would be, first thing is safety of employees. Okay. So I want to really know, what's the impact of COVID on my employees, and how do I help them? What kind of support we need to give them? Second thing is, to be honest, again, related to employees as well, but more the well-being. So the common question I ask every day CMT is, have you been speaking to people down level? So we have a skip level concept. So I want everyone to do that and make sure that we are hearing right from a blue collar worker, whether people are feeling okay mentally as well. And third thing is connect with customers. So I get a brief in terms of how many customer interactions we have had, how many people interactions we have had, and how the safety from a COVID perspective is going. That's going to give me a bit of assurance. Of course, there is all the, financials, everything is there, but I would not put it as the top 3 per se, because once you have happy, engaged employees, automatically many of the things are going to be happening anyways. So I'm always keeping a pulse check on employee motivation.
I think that's so important in today's times, And anyways, I believe that business is always run by people and enabled.
Correct.
By technology. Capital is something which is a resource.
Correct.
And how you lead your people and how you deploy technology will ensure great return on capital, right? So I think that's the funda which I live with. So Papa, a question coming from the audience for you is, how's the situation in Senegal when we talk about health and safety of people? In India, for example, we've had a lockdown which lasted for more than 45-50 days. Then we've had lockdown 2, then unlocks. How's it been in Senegal? So a lot of our participants on this are very keen to understand what kind of issues are you facing when it comes to the COVID, and how is the medical system and healthcare system coping up there? So it's a genuine concern which we have, and we want to hear from you.
Yeah, so thank you very much for this question. So in Senegal, we can say that in the beginning, the situation was not very tough, was not very difficult, because we didn't have many infections cases. But now and more, we are having this more and more infection case, and it's why most of the borders are closed actually. Okay, and we did have a confinement also, and which makes the situation more difficult. The confinement, people couldn't go and work. And as I say, knowing that in Senegal we are in a country where more than 60% of the business activity is informal. Actually, it is very, very difficult. Many people are doing business, sales, commerce, but it is informal. It is very difficult, and it's why the government has decreed confinement for 2 months, and after that we couldn't continue because the economic situation was difficult. So now everybody start going and coming to continue his job. About the medical system, our medical system is not very good also, because the equipments we have lack of equipments in Senegal, and also lack of staff also in Senegal. And it's why, knowing that now we are having more and more infections, we don't have enough places in the hospitals. It's why it is very difficult. Another information is that we have around 30 to 35 people who are illiterate, okay? And this situation make that many people, they don't care about the recommendation of the Ministry of Health, about the recommendation of the government, and it's why it is difficult. About business, purely we can say that in the field of business also, it is very difficult now, knowing that most of the FMCG, most of the commodities, they are imported from abroad. We know, for example, that the basic dish for Senegal is the rice. It is imported from India. It is imported from Thailand, Vietnam. Okay, and we are having some problems because there is, let's say, a lack of for these kinds of products. Yeah, this is the current situation we have in Senegal. But one thing I can add, and which is positive, is that knowing that borders were closed, many entrepreneurs, they start thinking and creating new way of working, and the government also start promoting local products that we have here, and this is something positive, and people more and more today are going to use this local products and encouraging also these local entrepreneurs.
Sure. That's nice to hear, and it feels good to hear that. I have one last question, and it's
Thank you.
all the panelists and whoever wants to take this on can take it on. It's a very interesting question from Nihali. How can we plan for managing the invisible cost of complexity as we restart and rebuild our business model? So I'll just repeat it. How can we plan for managing the invisible cost of complexity as we restart and rebuild our business model? I'm surely not taking that question, so I open it up to Rohit, Ashok, or Papa to, who wants to go on it.
I know if I can take that question, I don't think you can plan specifically for this invisible cost of complexity. What I would propose to everybody is a scenario planning, a best case, worst case, and a medium case scenario. And you just have to work on it. And this is a very moving scenario planning. Every month it will be evolving. And that is what you can do because you really don't know the under the iceberg costs, right? Underneath the iceberg, you wouldn't know. People don't turn up. We have blue collar workers who don't want to come back. So how are we going to manage that? So that's what I would say.
Sure.
If I may just add, I will possibly say that, like I was mentioning, it's important to rebalance resources and resource allocation. So for instance, if you suddenly feel that, your logistics cost is going up because the trucks are available and they're scarce, and with diesel prices moving up, the cost of logistics suddenly is increasing. You will suddenly realize that with all the safety and care that you are deploying, generally the cost of taking care of employees and providing that support is going up. Now that has to be rebalanced somewhere, let's say by taking a choice of curtailing travel budget, or for instance, curtailing your real estate cost in the new normal. And then saying that, okay, what are the things that we will obviously continue to do, which is must do, and where are the choices we can possibly curtail and, cut down.
Good. So it's 4 p.m. I think we have almost come to the end of today's 60 minutes. Just flew on a pretty insightful 60 minutes. So before I close, I would want, starting with Ashok, each of the panelists to give a closing note, a parting shot, about the situation we are in, and some insights or some words of wisdom to all participants.
So on closing, Jonathan, my request to everybody here is, things will keep happening at work. You can't change it. You can't control it. Remain positive. Always remain positive. I would say, please invest in your personal development, both mental, physical, and also educational. So read, speak to people, stay connected, invest in, exercise, yoga, meditation. I really want to emphasize, because people don't do it. They all want to do it, but they find it difficult to do it. And there's a common belief that, and the proven theory as well, if you practice something for 21 days, it's very likely that you will do it. So, for example, we have started a 5 a.m. club in the company, as I mentioned before. So stuff like that, I think it will really help. So please invest in yourself. Everything else will happen the way it has to happen anyways. And if you invest in yourself, there's a good chance that things will turn out positive more than ever. That's my closing.
Rohit?
Absolutely agree with what Ashok is saying. 100%. We'll just put a ditto sign beneath that. That's the mantra, guys. It's important to take that pit stop and unwind, rewind, whatever your situation is. Eventually we will all come out of it, and that's the belief with everybody should stay positive.
Papa, all the way.
Yes, thank you. So my recommendation first for the leaders, entrepreneurs, and company owners is to tell them that it is during this period, this tough period, difficult period, that we need the most our employers, our employees, our collaborators. So my recommendation is to ask to leaders, to company owners to treat better and much better their employees, their collaboration, to communicate with them, to promote with them, to make them know that the company is their companies. And if they do so, if they do in this kind of tough situation, the collaborators will be united to sustain the company. So I think this is something very important. Another thing to say is that during this kind of situation, we can, as Ashok has said, we can improve ourselves by learning online, by having as a certificate, by reading a lot in any specific field, and all this will develop us and will give us as a competencies, new skills, and after the pandemic we can grow with this. Thank you again for this invite.
So Peterson, over to you. I think the panel has really been good. Thank you for your participation. So Peterson, hand it over to you.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan, for facilitating this discussion so well. Thank you, dear panel members, Ashok, Papa, and Rohit, for such an insightful webinar. Thank you so much for being with us. It has been a pleasure being with you all today. Before we conclude our today's session, we would also want to thank all the association, Geisha, NASSCOM COE, Bharat Nirman, and LMA for supporting HRAI and its event. To know more about these associations, request you to kindly visit the links provided in the chat window. Thank you once again, dear panel members and our participants, for joining us today. Do join us on an exciting series of learning, the 2020 Dialogue Masterclass series, starting from 22nd of August to 31st of August, where our first masterclass is on Reinvent Yourself by Mr. Harsh Johri, an executive and leadership coach. Request you to kindly register for this event at the link mentioned in the chat window, along with the WhatsApp link to join the masterclass group chat. See you soon. Stay safe and take care. Bye for now. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
So Peter, we are ending this meeting.
Yes, Shyam, we can go ahead and end the meeting.
Okay, good. Thanks.